Jovan, Buha! Buha!
Yo, yo, I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to another live show. Just got back from Crypto.com Arena, where the Lakers won 120-101 over the Washington Wizards. LA's third straight win. They improved to 49-26. They've won 15 of 17 games, and notably, they won without Luka Doncic. They are now 7-6 on the season without Luka. No chance to catch a breath for LA with Cleveland in town tomorrow in a huge game, one of their biggest remaining games of the season. Cleveland played tonight in Utah, had a game that went down the wire there. So some heavy minutes for them. I think James Harden played 39 minutes tonight. Donovan Mitchell played 36. So they're not coming in well rested, at least as not well rested as the Lakers. But still, that's going to be a nice test for LA, especially coming off some lesser competition here with Indiana, Brooklyn, and Washington consecutively. LA let their foot off the gas in that fourth quarter against Indiana. Did not even attempt to put their foot on the gas through the first three quarters of the Brooklyn game, and then had a shaky first 14 minutes of this one before they went on a big run early in the second quarter to blow this game open, led by as many as 30 points, finished with a 120 offensive rating without Luka Doncic, which I think is notable based on their struggles offensively without Luka for the season. So nothing crazy to take away from this game in terms of the process necessarily. The Lakers played one of the worst teams in the NBA. They won by 19, as they should, with or without Luka in the lineup. So not going to spend too much time on the basketball in this one, but shout out to the chat. Shout out to the late night gang. As I see some of you guys are saying, talking about it, we got the late night gang t-shirt, testing it out. Really excited about this design. I think you guys are going to love it. I have another shirt coming in, just testing out different shirts with this design. So really excited for that one. So we got the basic Buha's Block merch in terms of the word mark and the B logo. That's going to be the more straightforward merch. But then we also got Late Night Gang here that very excited to drop ASAP. And for those who missed it earlier today, I did a members only mailbag. So I'm going to start doing some of these, both members only mailbags and members only Q&As. I will be posting it for the entire audience, but if you are a member, would love for you to join the Discord to get part of the different chats in there and send over your questions for future mailbags. And then also we'll be doing some private lives with members coming up to answer your questions and then be posting that to the broader audience. So shout out to all the members. Shout out to the late night gang. All right, let's get into it. So Buha's big picture is, I think one of the things with tonight for me was sharpening the non-Luka minutes, and I thought we saw some progress. Now, granted, I don't want to overreact to the Lakers playing the Wizards, and certainly the first 14 minutes of the game were uninspiring, unserious. LA was down 33-29 at around I think the 9:57 mark of the second quarter. But looking at some of the recent lineup data, the Lakers have really struggled with Luka off the floor post All-Star break. There's been an 18.8 point per 100 possession swing. That is in line with the gap there with Wemby recently with San Antonio and Jokic with Denver. That's a monster number where the Lakers have been 10.8 points per 100 possessions better with Luka on, and conversely 10.8 points per 100 possessions worse with him off offensively, and then an 8-point swing defensively. So with Luka off the floor, post All-Star break, Lakers have had a 110 offensive rating and a 119 defensive rating. So they've been getting crushed in those minutes. With Luka on the floor, 121 offensive rating, 111 defensive rating. They've been dominating teams. So I say all that to say that tonight, one of the things that I was impressed by was just how the Lakers settled in offensively and were able to put a ton of pressure on the rim. Were able to get out in transition. And from a playmaking perspective, LeBron and Austin were both ready to take on a larger role, take on more usage, and they combined for 21 of LA's 29 assists. They did also combine for 9 turnovers. There was some sloppiness there and some telegraphing passes or just being loose with the ball and some uncharacteristic fumbling of the ball and turnovers in that regard. But I thought the playmaking tonight was at a very high level. Lakers didn't shoot the ball well, just 7 for 24 on threes, 29%, but they got to the free throw line, 32 free throw attempts, and I thought that was notable, especially without Luka, who has been leading the league in free throw attempts for the majority of the season. So to not have their best and greatest foul drawer, like Austin stepped up, he drew 12 free throw attempts. LeBron got to the free throw line 6 times. But I just overall liked the way that the offense settled in. And they did not have a great first quarter offensively. They were down 26-25 going into the second quarter. But from that second quarter on, they explode with 40 points in the second quarter and then have a little bit of a down third quarter, get outscored 33-26, turning the ball over a bit. Washington's getting out in transition, but then they put things away early in the fourth and then get some much needed rest for guys. So I don't want to overreact or put too much on how LA looked against Washington without Luka. But I more so from a process perspective, I liked some of the things that they were doing with spamming Austin in the pick and roll, getting him downhill. He did not shoot the ball well from deep, but he did shoot the ball well inside the arc and some of those pull-up mid-rangers or getting to the rim and some of his decel footwork in the paint. And then you had LeBron, who had a triple-double, his third of the season, 125th of his career, also becomes the oldest player to ever post a triple-double, passing himself. But he had an awesome game, and his passes, the hit-aheads in transition, also the lob passes, just some really high-level passing from the Lakers. And I know it's against the Wizards. That caveat certainly applies, but I just like the way that they attacked Washington, and it was very much an inside-out performance, and they never quite clicked on the outside part of it, but it didn't really matter with how much they were attacking the rim, how much they were touching the paint, how much they were getting out in transition, and then also drawing fouls tonight. It didn't really matter that they turned the ball over 15 times, which is a little bit higher than you want, and also shot just 29% on threes. So I thought the non-Luka minutes, which have been an issue for LA post All-Star break, have been an issue all season. They've lost the non-Luka minutes on the season. There was some progress in the process of how they performed without him, and I think this could be a confidence boost for the group during the non-Luka shifts moving forward, and particularly in the playoffs, right? Because Luka is going to play 40 to 42 minutes in the playoffs. They only need to figure out 6 to 8 minutes without him, but it had been more of a concern recently, and I think this could be a small step in the right direction. In terms of notable performers, I already touched on LeBron and Austin, but let's get a little bit more into it. LeBron, 21 points, 10 rebounds, 12 assists, 8 for 16 shooting, 1 for 3 on threes, 4 for 6 at the line. Also had a nice block, 4 turnovers. He ended up leading that early fourth quarter shift with primarily a bench group that put the game away. Or, the game was already, I think it was like a 15, 16 point game early in the fourth, and then he extended it into the 20s, and then they ended up pulling the plug. But just really impressive game from LeBron, a 41-year-old having a triple-double. He's had a few near triple-doubles here recently and finally connected on it. But the passing tonight, again, the hit-aheads, finding guys in transition, the passing out of the post, the driving kicks. He was the Lakers had to stagger LeBron and Austin more than usual because Luka was out. And because of that, they just a lot more LeBron at point guard, was sharing the floor with Bronny and Luke Kennard for stretches there as those guys more like secondary playmakers, but really nice game from LeBron. Then Austin, 19 points, 3 rebounds, 9 assists, 1 steal. Did, as I mentioned earlier, have the 5 turnovers. 4 for 11 shooting, 0 for 4 on threes, 11 for 12 at the free throw line. So Austin was efficient inside the arc. He went 4 for 7 and had a couple nice layup finishes, a couple mid-range pull-ups. But he has been struggling from deep now for an extended period here, where I mentioned it on the road trip, did not have a game where he shot above 33% on threes or made more than 2 threes. He bounced back against Brooklyn, going 4 for 7, 57%, hitting multiple and shooting above 33%, which is a below average rate. But tonight goes 0 for 4. So his legs have just not quite been there with his long range jumper. That is something to monitor. And then again tonight, he took a tough, I think he got kicked in the knee on one play where he turned the ball over and had some just passes that I'm sure he would love to have back. But all things like, I liked his attacking in the pick and roll, had some great feeds, had a couple lobs to LeBron early, one in transition, one coming out of a timeout. LeBron had a great back cut for the lob, and then also had a nice feed to Rui, with Rui back cutting for a basket. So I thought Austin's, and then he was diming up the bigs, and those guys went perfect from the floor, combined 13 for 13 for DA and Jackson. So I liked Austin's interior game, both as a passer and a scorer, but right now his jumper has not been at the level he is needed to be at. And it is worth mentioning again that he drew, got to the free throw line 12 times, drew several shooting fouls. So even though his jumper wasn't falling, he was still able to use his craft and his guile and head fakes and footwork to get to the free throw line. Then Rui, I thought, had a solid game, 14 points, 6 rebounds. The rebounds were big. That was the 4th most on the team, tied for, technically 5th because a couple guys had 7, but, because Vando had 8 off, but Vando and Rui both played into garbage time, so some of their numbers were like inflated a little bit there, but I thought Rui, with Luka out, one of the areas the Lakers needed to be sharper in was the defensive rebounding. Rui helped step up there. He hit a 3, had a couple of pull-up jumpers, some nice cuts and finishes in transition. Then Jake LaRavia, they had an interesting start with DA, LeBron, Rui, Jake, and Austin. So going with a supersized lineup. Jake LaRavia was technically listed as the guard on the Lakers starting sheet, but 4 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 steals, and a block. Quiet offensive performance, didn't even attempt a 3, but I thought the defensive playmaking tonight, he was the primary guy on Bub Carrington. With the Lakers switching, he did get looks on other guys, but Bub tonight with just 2 for 6 shooting, 4 turnovers, did have 7 assists, but I thought Jake did a solid job as the primary guy with him and was part of a couple of the big runs that the Lakers had. If you look at the plus minus tonight, there are 4 guys who stand out as double figures guys. LeBron, plus 25, Jake, plus 23, Luke, plus 20, and Jackson, plus 18. Those 4 together were part of a couple of big runs that helped give LA separation. Then DeAndre Ayton, 12 points, 7 rebounds, an assist, 3 blocks, 2 turnovers, went perfect from the floor, 5 for 5, also perfect from the free throw line, 2 for 2. I thought had a quiet first shift, and then from that point on was just completely dominant. And like JJ mentioned that with the 2 centers, it was like Jackson had a great first shift. With DA, it was his second shift when he came back in after Jackson got the group going. I thought DA with the blocks and contests and just took care of business against an inferior front line. Off the bench, Jackson Hayes and Luke Kennard both dropped 19 points each. We'll start with Jackson, who I thought sparked LA's turnaround with a stretch in the beginning of the second quarter where he had a couple of putbacks. He had one where I think it was Bronny missed a jumper. LeBron swung it to Bronny. Bronny had an open 3. Bronny missed it. Jackson gets a putback dunk. There was one play LeBron got blocked. Jackson put it up. I think it was an and one. He had a nice drive in transition for a dunk. And so he went perfect from the floor, 8 for 8. Also hit a three, hit his third three of the season, 33rd 3-pointer of his career. JJ was joking after the game that despite Jackson's perfect 3-point shooting, he has no intentions of letting Jackson become a pick and pop big. He still wants him to be a rolling big. But the finishing tonight and the body control with Jackson, I thought was really impressive, even by his lofty standards. Like we know that's what he does, but also continuing defensively with 7 rebounds, a couple blocks. Like Jackson's been playing his best basketball of the season, and I think this is the perfect time for him to be playing the best basketball of the season. And you combine that with DA being on an upward trajectory over the entirety of this month, and the Lakers centers are playing their best basketball collectively, I think, of the season, which is a great thing for LA going into the postseason. Luke Kennard, 19 points, hit 4 threes, 7 to 10 shooting overall. Just some really big, timely shots for Luke. What was a spark plug during some of those runs that they had against the Wizards bench. And he, I think, is officially out of the slump, the mini slump that he was on going into the road trip and for parts of the road trip. I think he's back to being himself. Then Jared Vanderbilt, with the Lakers playing without Luka and Marcus Smart, Vando played 23 minutes, 4 points, 8 rebounds, an assist, a steal. I thought played really good defense tonight. Missed an open 3, or it was a semi-contested 3, I would say, in the corner, and then missed a layup and had a nice cut though, and got to the free throw line, made a couple of his free throws. So like offensively, Vando continues to be, I think, a little disappointing, where just some of the progress he had shown earlier in the season has not stabilized and consistently materialized recently. And I think that's ultimately been why he's been pushed out of the rotation. But I think from a defensive perspective and from an effort and rebounding perspective, second on the team in rebounds with 8, had a steal, and just makes teams uncomfortable with his full court pressure or even half court pressure, where you see teams, he's a guy that teams try to avoid when they can. Then Bronny, I thought tonight, bit of a mixed bag from him. I liked some of the things defensively that he did in terms of pressuring the ball and switching on to bigger guys and fighting. At the same time, just could not make a shot tonight. Went 2 for 10, 0 for 5 on threes. I think we saw some of the limitations with trying to make him I think definitely at this point, he is not a backup point guard. I think he's more of a backup off guard. And we saw like LA in that first shift in the second quarter tried to run him as a secondary ball handler with Luke as more of an off ball guy. And then LeBron obviously also being out there. But he had a very basic entry pass turnover that led to an uncontested dunk for Washington. And you had a couple turnovers on the night. And you could just tell that after that first shift, JJ decided to go more away from him in terms of him being a ball handler and a creator. And he ended up being more of an off-ball guy, where Luke stepped up, and actually Luke was running a lot of the offense, bringing the ball up, initiating in the half court. So I think Bronny's still trying to figure out his role. I think it's been encouraging to see the progress over these last few games and him getting some real reps. And I thought he played solid these last couple games. This was definitely a down offensive performance. And I think he just has to figure out ultimately what's his role going to be, because it seems like they want him to be something of a ball handler, playmaker, but I think he's in between that and like trying to be a scorer or, attacking off the dribble and doing some of the things he's done at the G League level, where that is just not quite materialized at a certain level at the NBA level, right? So I think they're still trying to figure that out, but they still won his minutes tonight, and like some of his plus minus was a little bit altered by playing with the garbage time group. The garbage time group got their butt kicked over the final few minutes of the game, so he would have been part of that double-digit plus minus group, lower than the rest of the group, but still part of it had he not closed the game. And then not much to take away from Drew Timme did take a shot in his 6 minutes. Dalton missed a corner three. Kobe Buffkin had a nice decel for a finish, but not much to take away from those three. And then in terms of stat of the night, I have two. I've already touched on both of them, but I will reiterate them. The centers went 13 for 13 tonight, 5 for 5 for DA, 8 for 8 from Jackson. They also added a combined 14 rebounds and 5 blocks. So centers are playing great basketball. And LeBron posting his third triple-double of the season, 125th triple-double of his career, which is the fifth most, and passed himself for oldest player with a triple-double. And then in terms of my three takeaways, takeaway number one, this is what I've been harping on relentlessly lately. LA gets some much-needed rest. So Lakers had 2 days in between games for the first time since December 26th and 27th. I went back and checked. Technically, they had a break with the All-Star break, but during the actual meat of the season, not including the All-Star break, the last time the Lakers had 2 days in between games was December 26th and December 27th. If you look at the rest of the schedule, it's every other day or back-to-back, and then back-to-back followed by 1 day off, then another game. Like the Lakers have had a brutal schedule from a flow perspective they just have not had breaks. So they got a practice in yesterday, and then Luka got the night off tonight. It was not by design. It was not what Luka wanted, but he picked up his 16th technical, gets suspended. So Luka gets a break, and I've been on Luka's minutes have been very high lately. I think higher than they should be. Austin only played 27 minutes tonight. And the fact that he did not play in the fourth quarter and LeBron got the first shift, iced the game, and then came out, I thought that was great for Austin after the last, I believe the last 11 games he had played 37 or more minutes. It was overdue for Austin to have a game where he played under 30 minutes. Even LeBron, 33 is probably a little bit higher than I would want for him on a night like tonight. On an average night, I'm fine with 33 for LeBron, but it was his fewest minutes since the first game of the road trip. So you had to go back 7 games. That first game against Houston was the last time LeBron played 33 or fewer minutes. So that was March 16th. So 2 weeks ago was the last time LeBron played 33 or fewer minutes. So even LeBron got a little bit of a break there and playing fewer minutes than he was playing more recently. So I thought tonight was a palate cleanser for the Lakers from just a rest and recovery perspective. Outside of LeBron, nobody played more than 28 minutes. Jake played 28, but everybody else, Bronny was at 26, Austin 27, Rui at 26, and then Vando 20. It was just a nice minutes distribution tonight. And with the Lakers having a back-to-back tomorrow, had this been more like the Brooklyn game, I would have been more concerned going into tomorrow's game. But the fact that they had the break over the weekend, Luka had the night off. He's going to be rested tomorrow. Austin had a relative night off from a minutes perspective. I think that bodes well for LA's odds against Cleveland tomorrow. And then takeaway number 2 is injury update on Marcus Smart. JJ said after the game that he remains day-to-day and that the Lakers are not going to rush him back and they want him to feel 100% before he returns. So based on the vibe of JJ's answer, it does not seem like Marcus is going to play tomorrow. Now, there could be some gamesmanship within all this, and maybe Marcus pops up as, I think we'll see once we, they'll have the injury report at some point in the morning. We'll have a sense then, right? If he's probable, I think he's going to play. If he's questionable, I think he's probably not going to play. And then obviously if he's doubtful or out, then he's out. But based on JJ's answer, and just sometimes you could tell, unless he's a great actor and deserves an Academy Award nomination, I just felt like he was implying he's day-to-day, but we're not rushing him. He's not close to 100% yet. It's going to be a little bit longer. Now, again, could pop up tomorrow as probable or in, and that would be great news for LA. They're really going to need him on Thursday in OKC. That is I don't want to say it's a must win because it's just going to be a tough game. And even if it is a must win, the Lakers could lose it because of how great OKC is. But that is a huge game for LA. And as Denver continues to nip at their heels, which is something I'm going to touch on in my next takeaway, like they need to continue to bank wins and just keep that separation there and lock themselves into the 3 seed. And then it's just a huge measuring stick game against OKC. It's a team that they're 0-2 against. They had the end of the season last year going 1-1 against them, but like it's going to be a big game, and it could also have MVP implications depending on how the Lakers fare and how Luka fares directly against Shea. So really big game for the Lakers that they're going to need Marcus back for, and we'll see if he's able to return for that. Maybe the Lakers are just saving him for that game, and they're going to bring him back, and they'll I think have a much better chance against OKC in that case, just because Marcus is so important for the defense. And then takeaway number 3, West standings watch. So tonight, OKC beat Detroit in overtime. I'm sure some of you saw that game. Shea gets the push-off offensive foul, hits the game-winning 3 in regulation, but was whistled for the offensive foul before then. The rare push-off call on him, and then it goes to overtime. And, they prevail. I think he had 8 points in overtime, so they get the win over Detroit. But I think for the Lakers, that makes you feel a little bit better about losing to Detroit, that they just played a close game. I mean, a game that went to overtime in OKC against OKC without Cade. Like Detroit has still been playing at a very high level without Cade. Minnesota got Ant back. He came off the bench. They blew out Dallas, but they have now lost Jaden McDaniels, who is now week to week with this knee injury. And that, to me, changes the dynamic of the Minnesota matchup potentially, where 1, they could just drop out of 5 into 6 if they drop a couple games here coming up. But 2, if he is not 100% or if he's out, that makes that matchup much more appealing, potentially more appealing compared to Houston. Now, I'd be more afraid of Ant than KD or Şengün, just with we saw how those guys fared against the Lakers defense. I mean, Şengün had a good game. KD, the Lakers held him in relative check, and were able to turn him over. I think Ant has. We saw what he did against the Lakers first round, but in general, leading the Wolves to back-to-back conference finals. I'm not saying I'd rather play Minnesota than Houston, but if Jaden McDaniels is compromised, that does change that dynamic. Then Spurs beat the Bulls. Suns beat the Grizzlies. And I wanted to touch on Lakers versus Nuggets down the stretch here. So the Nuggets are 48-28. They are a game and a half behind the Lakers, but technically 2.5 games behind the Lakers, with LA having the head-to-head tiebreaker. So down the stretch here, looking at the magic number record-wise for the Lakers, if Denver goes 6-0, the Lakers need to go 5-2 to keep the 3 seed. If Denver goes 5-1, which I actually think is plausible if you look at their schedule, especially with OKC and San Antonio potentially resting guys for the final 2 games of the season. If Denver goes 5-1, Lakers just need to go 4-3, which I think is very realistic for LA. And then if Denver goes 4-2, LA would just need to go 3-4. So I think Denver is going to go somewhere between 4-2 and 6-0. So I think at a minimum, LA needs to go 3-4 down the stretch. I think they're going to go 3-4 at a minimum down the stretch, but more realistically, 5-2 or 4-3. So I still think the Lakers are in the driver's seat for the 3 seed. What could change that is if they lose to Cleveland tomorrow and then lose to OKC on Thursday. If they had a couple of losses in a row, they'd be tied in the loss column. So they'd still be in the 3 seed because of having the tiebreaker. But at that point, Denver does have the easier remaining schedule, with LA still having OKC and Phoenix on their slate. Whereas Denver, they do have San Antonio in a game that San Antonio will likely be trying for, but they have OKC and San Antonio at the end of the season, when one of those two or both of those will probably have their seeding locked up, and just could be OKC's 1, San Antonio's 2. They have nothing to play for. Denver beats those 2 teams. So I think there's a real chance Denver goes 5-1, which again would mean the Lakers have to go at least 4-3, which I think is very plausible. But with all that said, let's get into the Q&A here. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to the late night gang. First one from Jay. Luka gets rest. Austin sits entire fourth quarter, only plays 27 minutes on first night of a back-to-back before facing a tough Cleveland team tomorrow. Was best case scenario tonight. Agreed. And look, there's a point there where it was like, is this Brooklyn all over again when LA's down 4 early in the second quarter? But they blew the doors off Washington the rest of the way. I think I tweeted it out. When they were down 33-29, from that point on, they outscored Washington 38-13 the rest of the first half. So that iced the game. I mean, the game was pretty much over at halftime, right? They were up 21. Washington had a little bit of a run there in the third quarter, but it was never really in doubt from that point on. So 100% agree. That was my first takeaway. Like, LA got much needed rest as a group, with the whole group having a couple days off. They practiced, but it was a relatively short, quick practice. And then Luka getting the night off, Austin sitting the entire fourth quarter, only playing 27 minutes, even LeBron playing his fewest minutes in a couple weeks. Just being all around, tonight was a success for LA, all things considered. Jay, again, Braun still has so much left in the tank. I'm optimistic he's able to take it to another level once the playoffs start, like he did last year. Yeah, and even tonight, he missed a couple dunks, which is unlike him. He could have easily been 10 for 16 from the floor, had 25 points instead of 21. But LeBron, I agree. I do not have any real concerns with LeBron come playoff time. Like, the only thing with him is we've never seen someone play this well and this much this late into their career with this type of mileage. So that everything he does continues to be uncharted territory. But even going back to last year, I mean, he's just a playoff riser, and he and Luka, I just don't have any questions about. Those are the two guys that I think are going to be fine come playoff time. Peter, thank you for the super chat. McDaniels with similar injury to Jokic. Minnesota mum on severity. Is Houston still preferable round 1? OKC after tonight favored to be 1 seed. Detroit versus OKC was great. It was great. I caught some of it. I will admit I did have that on my laptop as the fourth quarter of this game was going on. So I was tracking both. Once Drew, Timmy, and Dalton Connect are checking in, that was like while this game was going down the stretch and then into overtime. I touched on this a second ago, but I still think so. Taking out McDaniels, I mean, Luka's had his way with McDaniels this season, and we know he's had his way against him going back to the 2024 Western Conference Finals. Even last year, I thought that, like, if we're comparing Luka in the regular season this year versus McDaniels to Luka in the postseason against McDaniels last year to Luka in the postseason against him in 2024, I think last year was maybe he wasn't maybe as efficient or effective as like 2024 conference finals or this regular season. But I think we're going to be getting the version of Luka that he was in the regular season against McDaniels. So I actually look at McDaniels as more of a potential Austin problem. But even then, Austin cooked him in that game in Minnesota, and Austin's played well against Minnesota overall. So, I mean, I would favor the Lakers over Minnesota or Houston. It doesn't really matter to me. I think Houston has a lower floor than Minnesota. But if McDaniels is out, that does change the calculus here. And it just gives them, he killed the Lakers last year, right? Like he was the ultimate weak side safety valve and attacking closeouts, hitting threes, attacking mismatches in the post, and then playing really good defense. Like he really hurt the Lakers last year. Also his rebounding, his cutting, all that stuff. So they don't have him. I mean, he's their fourth best player, and there are some nights he's even their third best player. So he's a really big piece of what they do. It's tough. I guess like there's still the infrastructure of Chris Finch, Anthony Edwards, Julius Randle was only there for one of the two conference finals runs, but like he's now been on a conference finals run with them. Plus Gobert has been to the conference finals a couple times with them. That infrastructure is still strong. And while they would really miss McDaniels, I don't know. Like, I just think it would basically make the Lakers bigger favorites in the series, but I still might prefer Houston because they don't have a point guard or a functioning late game offense. Yeah, I don't know. I probably have to think a little bit more about it. But even, I mean, they were winning games without Ant. I mean, they just beat Houston without Ant. Ant's back now. But I think Minnesota, if both teams are firing on all cylinders, Minnesota to me has the higher ceiling. They also probably have a slightly higher floor. So even, I assume, I mean, to your point, if McDaniel's just out, I would probably prefer Minnesota, although it's relatively close. If he's compromised, if he's like back but compromised or 70%, 80%, at that point, I would still probably prefer Houston, but it's close either way. Jay, thank you for the super chat. The stretch versus Houston, Denver, Minnesota was a test to see if this team could win a series or two. The OKC game is a test to see if this team is a real contender or not, in my opinion. Yeah. I mean, the good thing is they got a couple cracks at it, right? So they play on Thursday and they play on Tuesday. So even if they lose that Thursday game in OKC, which is one of the toughest places to play in the league, they get another crack at it the following week, Tuesday at home. So I don't want to overreact to them losing to OKC, but it is going to be a measuring stick game, right? And if they get the doors blown off and they lose in embarrassing fashion, similar to the game in OKC earlier in the season, then that does show us potentially where they're at in terms of, okay, they can beat one of those teams in round one, but if they're somehow matched up with OKC in round two, if they drop to 4 or if OKC drops to 2, and then now they're playing them, like, yeah, then you have a sense there of, okay, OKC's gone 3-0 in the season series, potentially 4-0, and then that, you know, that there's a bit of a gap there. But if they win or it's competitive, I think that gives you more confidence as to how a potential series would play out between those two teams. But with the way things are shaping up, it's going to be a while until the Lakers play the Thunder. It with the current bracket would be in the conference finals. So they got to take care of whoever they play in round one first, and then a really scary San Antonio team in round two. That's frankly been the best team in basketball the past 30 games, and then play OKC in the conference finals. But yeah, definitely a huge game for the Lakers. And I mean, I think to this point, like those were all statement wins, but OKC and San Antonio have been at a different level than basically the rest of the league for, I mean, OKC for the entirety of the season. San Antonio definitely the last like 30 to 40 games has just morphed into a juggernaut contender. So they're not playing San Antonio again. If they play them again, it'll be Western Conference semifinals. But OKC is like, it's just a different caliber of opponent. So if they can, and OKC is going to want that game. I'm sure they're aware of you know, Luka has been rising. I know maybe not for every MVP list he's been rising, but he has been rising from an odds perspective, and Shea has been dropping from an odds perspective. So if you look at it just through that lens, this is a big game for OKC, both to lock up the 1 seed and for Shea versus Luka and some of the narratives that are going to come out of that. So they're going to be up for that game, I think, and so will the Lakers, and we'll see how it plays out. Chuck Dangler, a.k.a. Fang Charlie. Sup, brate? I saw JaVale McGee up close in China yesterday. It was epic. 3 seed is a must for us. Need more merch pics on IG from you. Email reply, LOL. How was JaVale? JaVale's huge. He's like 7'1", 7'2". I think they underlist his height. JaVale McGee is a giant, but that's awesome. And I agree. 3 seed is a must for the Lakers. I think if you think about like one of the other psychological parts, I would say, for like 3 versus 4 right now, aside from even who you're going to play in round 2, is it's either going to be this, like, one of those two teams is going to kind of come or be treading in the wrong direction. I was going to say come down to earth, but I wouldn't even say Minnesota or Houston is like floating right now. That they're both on earth, that they are ground bound right now. So whether it's a Houston team that has just been pretty meh for an extended stretch of time, or it's a Minnesota team that had Ant out for a bit, then right as he's coming back, McDaniels goes out now and he could miss the rest of the regular season, if not potentially longer. Either way, it's like you probably want the team that's struggling a little bit more. Like I'm a big believer in momentum going into the postseason. And even with the Lakers last year, that was kind of an underrated part of the end of their season, where they did have the big January and February and March. But if you actually look at the end of the regular season, they go just 4-3 in their final 7 games, and they weren't playing their best basketball. I mean, they did have the OKC win and then the OKC loss, but like they'd been a little bit before that, and they had some losses and stuff. And it just like the Lakers were closer to a 500-ish team, or a little bit above a 500-ish team down the final like 10, 12 games of the season. They did have some big wins against Houston and OKC, so I don't want to downplay that. But I do believe you need some, like, having momentum to me can matter going into the postseason. Lakers have great momentum right now. They've won 15 of 17. And that's going to be tested with Cleveland and OKC a couple times. But yeah, I think having the 3 and playing whichever team is struggling at the 6, most likely, that's going to be great for round 1. Yes, I will be sharing some merch picks, and I still have it on my to-do list that I owe you an email. Kai Sky, thank you for Super Chat. Thoughts on Jason getting attacked on Twitter? I would honestly prefer not to get into it. I'm sure we'll get into it Wednesday on Lakers Collective. Jason is my guy, so you're not going to hear any slander from me on that. But I know there's just a lot of Luka discourse right now. It just continues. I said this on the mailbag that came out today, that you would think with the Lakers up at that point had won 14 of 16, now 15 of 17. That the Luka discourse would have calmed down, but that has just not been the case. I laid out my points about Luka's defense and why I think it's been underrated up to this point. And looking at some of my favorite all-in-one metrics defensively, like none of them are perfect, but he rates as somewhere between like a 40th to 70th percentile defender in most of those metrics. Then also looking at the Lakers defense in the totality of the season, they've been less than a point per 100 possessions worse with him on versus off. And then I just referenced like post All-Star break, there's been a much bigger gap in that, actually in a positive sense. And then looking at his steals and top 10 in charges and the defensive rebounding, the rebounding percentage is top 5, whether you filter on cleaning the glass. He's in the 80th percentile, but ranks in the top 5, whether you filter for point guards, wings, or forwards. So he's an elite rebounder, regardless of what position you put him in. Do I think he's defending better now than he was earlier in the season? Yes. Do I think he was a more inconsistent defender earlier in the season? Yes. Would I categorize him as a bad defender earlier in the season? I don't think so. I would not go that far. I think there's a lot of nuance. Like, it's also partly the Lakers defense was bad. So it's hard. Like, I think it was more of like a team wide thing within the rotation where everyone was subpar to a degree outside of maybe Marcus and Jake and Vando and some of their better rotation defenders. I think everybody was at a lower tier or caliber of defense than they were capable of, like, collectively. And then around January, things started to pick up a little bit, definitely into February. And then this past month has been awesome defensively for them. Like, it's been a slower build, but I know Luka had the rough December, and that has been held against him by a lot of people for a while here. But yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much like, I'm just kind of over the Luka discourse, because I feel like every like both sides have their opinions and I have my opinions, and it just feels like everyone kind of states what they believe, and then no, like regardless of whether you're pro Luka or anti Luka, like no one really changes their mind. It's just like it's a very divisive and polarizing situation. But I will continue to state that I think the discourse has gotten completely out of hand. I think it's been far too negative. And even if Luka doesn't win MVP, or you don't think Luka should be MVP, he's having a great season by any measure. So like, I think sometimes we get too much in the weeds with awards and who's the best and who should win MVP. And like, we could have that debate, but I also think there should be more appreciation for what Luka's doing rather than trying to just, criticize him or tear him down or look at his flaws or weaknesses. And for a longer answer on this, I touched on it in my mailbag, but I'm sure we'll touch on it on Lakers Collective. So yeah, I don't really want to get too much more into it. Or let me see. I think there's a couple of Peter, thank you for the super chat. Detroit without 5 leading scorers tonight. Are they in your tier 1? Luka 4% chance on Kalshi. He's not getting MVP. If you had to vote, who would you vote for? I've been thinking about this. Peter likes putting me on the spot here and getting me in. I'll say this. I'm lower on Wemby than I think consensus right now. Like a lot of people have it as Shea versus Wemby, and I'm not there. I just think that the minutes gap is a huge thing for me. I know you could argue that on a per minute possession, Wemby's been the best player in the league. Wemby's been the most efficient player. Like, I mean, there's a nearly 20 point swing between on and off with the Spurs with Wemby, and they've been playing great basketball for a while. So if you wanted to make that argument, that's fine. But when you look at Luka's played, I think around 500 more minutes than him. Jokic and Shea have both played around 300 or so more minutes than him. Those are big gaps in this race that, yes, on a per minute, per possession basis, Wemby might have certain advantages, but I think Bill Simmons said it on his podcast that Wemby would be the first MVP to average under 33 minutes per game, and because right now he's averaging 29. I think he's great. I think he's going to win MVP in the future and probably win multiple MVPs. But I think when Shea and Luka and Jokic are all having the seasons that they're having statistically, I can't quite get there when he is just playing so many fewer minutes than him. So it's tough for me. I think I'll say I think Shea's going to win. I know that's not me giving my take here, but I would be pretty surprised if Shea wins. I mean, really the only way I could see him potentially losing is if OKC lost the 1 seed. I don't even know if that necessarily means Wemby's going to win, but at that point it might be part of the Shea argument is OKC's been the best team. And if they're not the best team and they're not the 1 seed, I could see then it becoming well, do you like Wemby? Do you like Luka? Do you like Jokic? And then almost like splitting some of the votes across multiple guys. Maybe he still wins in that case because he still gets a certain amount of votes. But I think you will see a little bit more of a split if they lose the 1 seed. That said, I don't think they're losing the 1 seed. So I think if I was making a prediction on it, I think Shea's going to win. And I think that the next straw poll is coming out soon. So I think that will likely reflect that. In terms of Detroit, there's still you're making a strong case for them in my tier 1, or to be in my tier 1. I still think my tier 1's probably OKC, San Antonio, and Boston. I have Detroit in my tier 2. It's mainly just they're unproven in the postseason. You could say the same thing about San Antonio, but I think Wemby's just at a different level than Cade, and I don't think that is particularly close. So, yeah, I also think Detroit. I mean, we've seen it. I mean, they've beaten the Knicks, but I think if the Knicks beat the Celtics in round 2, because that's likely going to be the 2-3 matchup, though Cleveland's right there behind the Knicks. I think Detroit could beat New York. I don't think Detroit could beat Boston. I think Boston beats Detroit if they match up in the Eastern Conference Finals. So you can maybe. I also can't quit New York. I still believe in New York. I don't know what's wrong with me, but yeah. So I mean, I would probably have Detroit third in the East, behind Boston 1 and New York 2. I definitely have them ahead of Cleveland. I'm lower on Cleveland than consensus, I think. I mean, I just have them 4th in the East. But yeah, to me, they're probably an elite tier 2 contender. The main thing with me is I just worry, like we kind of saw it tonight a little bit. We nearly saw it in the Lakers game. And I know no Cade, but even with Cade, I still worry a little bit about their crunch time offense and some of the guys that they're relying on. Next one from Jazz Singh. Thank you for the super chat. How many games can the Lakers lose and be the 3 seed? Really like Sharpening. Wonder how we get him. Who's your number 1 realistic target going into the summer? I think the Lakers can lose. Well, I mentioned it earlier. So if Denver goes 6-0, LA has to go 5-2. If Denver goes 5-1, which would be my prediction right now, looking at Denver's schedule and how they're playing, I think they're probably going to go 5-1. LA just has to go 4-3. So LA could lose both games to OKC and lose to Cleveland and win the rest, and they're fine. They could win one of those 3 games, lose to the Suns, and they're fine. I think LA is going to go 4-3 at a minimum, if not 5-2. If they go 5-2, they ice it. So I guess that gets to the heart of your question here. If the Lakers go 5-2, they are the 3 seed. Anything less than that, it opens up the door for Denver, depending on how Denver performs. But if Denver loses at any point here down the stretch, LA just has to go 4-3 or better. So I think LA is going to lock up the 3 seed. I like Sharpening too. I like both Sharpenings. I think the San Antonio one is going to be a little bit harder to get. But I mean, Washington, they have a bunch of interesting players. But to your point, like Justin Sharpening tonight, 18 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, 8 for 12 shooting. And he recently got in a fight. I like him. I think he'd be a nice bench 2-way perimeter guy. And my number 1 realistic target, I mean, realistic is relative here, but I'm going to say Walker Kessler and Peyton Watson. I think you probably have to overpay for both those guys. So I am adding in that acknowledgement of I don't think you're getting like a bargain deal on either one of those guys. Maybe if Watson has a really tough playoffs, his market value takes like a little bit of a hit, but I would love either one of those guys as either long-term starting center or long-term forward for the Lakers. But outside of that, I think when we get it, if you want like a realistic target, I think Mitchell Robinson is gettable at a certain price, and that would be someone that I would like as a Laker. Lou Dort could be someone who's gettable if OKC decides not to trade him and just rejects his team option. Even if they decide to trade him, Lakers could get in on that. But especially if they let him become a free agent at that point, he's gettable. So I think those are a couple more realistic names for the Lakers. Just because, like, if only because they have cap space. And I don't see those, like, it doesn't really make sense for Mitchell Robinson to go to Chicago or Brooklyn, or Lou Dort to go to Chicago or Brooklyn. Those are rebuilding situations. Those guys are more win now players that are in their respective primes. They should be in winning situations. And I think with how both guys are wired, they're going to want to be in winning situations. So that's where I think the Lakers can step in and pay them market value or even a little bit more to entice them, and then potentially add one or both of those guys. Tanman, thank you for the super chat. Should sit LeBron for 2 weeks or playoffs after OKC? So look at the Lakers schedule coming up here. I would say, definitely after the second OKC game, I would not want to rest him before then. Then you close the season with at Golden State, Phoenix, Utah. I think what the Lakers will do is, because look, I mean, if they rest LeBron, I know I don't want to relitigate the whole, like, is LA's record and net rating without LeBron and all this stuff, but like, there is a possibility that they lose without LeBron. I think they need everybody down the stretch here. That Phoenix game is going to be a tough game. Phoenix might not be playing for anything at that point, but they have had the Lakers number this season. They're 3-1 against the Lakers. That is a losable game, especially if they don't have LeBron. Golden State and Utah, they should be able to win both those games without LeBron, although we'll see if Steph is back for that Golden State game. I don't think they're going to do this because, one, I don't think LeBron is wired that way. LeBron hates resting games, and he has spoken out against load management multiple times. And two, I also think because of how long the break is from the end of the regular season to the start of the playoffs, you're playing your final game of the regular season is on Sunday. You're either playing Saturday or Sunday for game one. So you have a 1 week break there. I think the way that teams view it is they don't like having that long of a break in between games. Like they like it from a rest and recovery perspective, but they don't like it from a rhythm perspective. And so I think maybe LeBron sits out that Utah game at the end of the season, especially if the Lakers have the 3 seed locked up and it doesn't really matter. But outside of that, I think he's going to play through at least the Phoenix game. But if he sits out the Utah game, then he could get over a week of, because the Phoenix game is on a Friday. Then he would have that Saturday through at least the next Saturday, if not the next Sunday off, which I think would be nice for him. Keon Park, thank you for the super chat. Until we have Braun, don't see Luka getting regular season MVP. I assume you mean as long as the Lakers have LeBron or until LeBron is gone. That could be it. I mean, I think typically how these things go, it's either, I mean, there's different, sometimes there's narrative based MVP awards, right? I think Russ in 2017 was a very narrative based MVP award. Then sometimes it's as simple as best player on best team, and it's team X won 58 plus games, 60 plus games. Maybe they were a surprise 1 seed, and this player put up MVP level numbers on the best team in the league. They win MVP. And sometimes it's more of a statistical case in terms of, especially more recently, the last 10, 15 years, like the advanced metrics all say this guy is the best guy in the league. And if he's on a top 3 or 4 seed, that typically leads to the player winning MVP. But yeah, I mean, I wish I had a better answer for all the anti-Luka sentiment out there. I mean, it seems to have been there to some degree in Dallas before he even joined the Lakers. Then combining that with him being on the Lakers has just led to a lot more negativity within the discourse around him. And I think just because of a lot of that stuff like that does, especially for people who are not following the Lakers, if you're constantly hearing Luka doesn't play defense, Luka's overweight, Luka doesn't try, Luka this, Luka that, like that subconsciously like infiltrates your mind. And then you start to believe some of these things. And then when you go to vote, you have Luka lower on your ballot. And I think just unfortunately for him, he has gotten a lot of negativity and just like bad PR lately for a variety of reasons. But I think a lot of it unfounded and a lot of it just completely overblown. So yeah, I mean, I think he has to battle. He has to battle more than just the competition. He has to battle the narratives and a lot of the noise surrounding him that you just don't see with the other MVP candidates. All right, hopping back in the chat here. Going to go about 15, 20 more minutes with the back-to-back tomorrow. Two Sizzle says, I don't think there's a recipe for MVP, but I do think there's a pecking order. I will say to this point that, because I know one of the, like, I think every season the MVP race is its own unique entity. And I think the one thing I've seen some people do is say, well, this guy won this year for this, so like that means this player should win for this. And it's like, I think there are stronger years for MVP. There are weaker years for MVP. I said this not too long ago. I think it was last week. I said, I think this is going to go down as one of the greatest MVP races of all time. I think you are having between Luka and Shea and Jokic and Wemby, I think those are four guys who 20 years from now, when we're looking back on NBA history, could all be regarded as top 25 players, could all have a couple MVPs at least and a couple championships and finals MVPs, and then also just ridiculous statistical resumes that we're going to remember this season as just one of the all-time MVP races. So I think for all four of the guys, that if the other three players were like, I just think the top four right now is so stacked that if you had an average NBA or MVP season from like if you went back the last like 10 years and took the average performances from like players 2 through 4 on the ballot, and then you put one of these four next to those average like 2 through 4, I think each one of these guys would be like the clear-cut favorite, heavy favorite for MVP. It's just they all happen to be like, again, like Shea's having a better season than last year. Shea won MVP last year. Jokic is statistically having arguably his best season of all time, and he's been a top 2 finisher in MVP the last 5 years. Luka, you can make a case for, is having the best season of his career, and he is yet to win MVP. Wemby has entered the mix, and as I said earlier, on a per minute, per possession basis, you could argue has been the best player in the league. He's just played far fewer minutes than those guys. So it's like, this is just a ridiculous race right now where I don't know if there's a right answer or a wrong answer. You could convince me of any of those guys as the MVP. You could convince me as any of those guys as fourth on the list. And maybe with the exception of Shea, I think because of OKC's record and they have had the most injuries of the top 6, like I think Shea has an argument for at least top 3. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I just think this is an insane MVP race. Peter, thank you for the super chat. SGA, Jokic, Wemby, Luka, all NBA first team. Who's number 5? I think if Cade is eligible, Cade will be number 5. I think if Cade is not eligible, it'll be Jaylen Brown. So I think it's that. But I'm going to say, I think there's going to be people who vote for Jaylen Brown over Luka. I could not disagree with that more. And I think just strip away everything. Like if you're saying who would you want for a single game to, you know, if you're starting the playoffs tomorrow, who do you want to lead your team in the postseason? I do not see how you would not pick Luka over Jaylen Brown. Mishra says, I honestly think Luka's better than his 2024 season other than from 3, but even that is getting close now. I was looking at the numbers for my mailbag, and yeah, I mean, he's right there. He's posting second best finishing within 3 feet of his career, best mid-range season of his career, and somewhere between second or third best 3-point shooting season of his career. But obviously since January, he's been at 40+%. So yeah. Shabugan, shout out to Shabugan. It's been a minute. Thank you for the super chat. If there's one thing that Mannix's individual defensive rating BS exposes, it's that the voting system for MVP is a farce. I can't think of another sport that allows a thing this asinine. There's been a lot of, I mean, one thing in general, I'm not a guy who, I don't like going at other media members because I respect all of my colleagues and counterparts. So I'm never going to do that. I think you could look at the PTI conversation and what was said there with Jaylen Brown being like, I don't see any conceivable argument for Jaylen Brown over the top 4. And, it kind of became a Jaylen Brown versus Luka thing, but that's like, I mean, we just saw he just went out and they were rolling without him with Jason Tatum now stepping back up, looking more like himself. Like they've been better without him in terms of on off. And I know there's some noise with that or some of their bench success or whatever, but still it's like, I don't see a world in which Jaylen Brown is better than Luka or Jokic, Shea, Wemby, etc. But to this point, I think one of the tough things is that there is no set criteria. And so again, to my earlier point, there could be the narrative component that people factor in. There could be the statistical component that people factor in. There could be the just who's the best player on the best team. Like I do think there are people that if Wemby and the Spurs pass Shea and the Thunder, they will switch their vote from Shea to Wemby. And it's that simple, right? So there's just no clear criteria for what it, like what's the best thing to weigh, right? And I think there's something beautiful within that to a degree in terms of just like, if you don't set the criteria and it's just let this group of 100 media members vote, I think they have got it right maybe 85% of the time. I like, that's where I will defend MVP a little bit in terms of, I think, because I understand the frustration with MVP and I'm not denying that. I just think if you look at the history of MVP, it is largely like there are MVPs we can go back and relitigate and say this player shouldn't have won this play. Like I'm on the side of, I think Jokic should have been the MVP in 2023. I think it played out the rest of that season with how Embiid flamed out in the playoffs versus Jokic winning the championship. But like, that's an example. I think you could go back, like the Steve Nash MVPs are controversial in retrospect. I think the Derrick Rose MVP is a little, the Russ MVP. Like there are MVPs you could go back and relitigate, like who should have won and was this actually the right choice? And with a little bit of distance, like I think in 2011, people just didn't want to vote for LeBron. LeBron was clearly the best player in the league. Even like he had the Dallas situation, but that was after the regular season. LeBron was the best player in the league and people just didn't want to give it to him because of the decision. And then you had Chicago being like, they played. And even if you want to say, well, LeBron had the Dallas situation, well, he went head to head with Derrick Rose and he kicked his ass and was guarding him in crunch time in a lot of those games. And Miami kicked Chicago's ass. So there's no doubt to me that LeBron James in 2011 was a better player than Derrick Rose. So we could go back and fight some of these, but for the most part, a lot of them are pretty accurate, I would say. And so I still think they have like an 80 to 85% hit rate. But I think what's happened lately is with the vote becoming publicized, there is a lot of pressure in politics as to who you're going to vote for, right? And if you are in the Boston market, if you are in the OKC market, if you are in the Denver market, if you're in the LA market, if you're in the San Antonio market, there's a certain amount of pressure to vote for the player that you cover, because if someone in LA, like I don't have a vote this year, but if someone in LA, I think a couple people have votes. If they don't vote for Luka in at least the top four, or just like didn't even put him on the ballot, like, there's going to be a certain amount of blowback, and not even potentially just from fans, but maybe even the Lakers, like who knows? And that applies to each individual market. So I think it becoming public I get why they've done that, but it also adds a different wrinkle to it where there's this pressure. And there could be a lot of groupthink, I think, with that, right? So media collectively made up their mind a month ago, Shea's going to be MVP. And now I think there's an element of like, if you don't vote for Shea for MVP, you're going to get mocked by some people or shamed for, well, 80% of people think Shea's MVP. Why were you part of the 20% that didn't? So that's another wrinkle here, is like with the voting becoming publicized, I think people don't necessarily vote for what they actually believe in, but rather also like what is best for them politically, or what is best for the perception of their votes, if that makes sense. Tommy says they keep moving the goalposts against Luka. Now defense and seeding matters. I don't know. I'm not gonna disagree with you. Connor Phillips, given our late season surge, what would you consider a successful season at this point? I think winning a first round series and having a hard fought second round series would be a success. I agree. I think, like, of course, anything more than that would be even more of a success. But with how things were looking for a large stretch of the season, and just how lifeless the Lakers were at times against the best teams in the league, for the stretch that they've had, and Just the way they've been playing lately, I would agree with this. I think winning a first. There's like also an element of I think for some people it's still hard to accept that San Antonio is as great as they are, because going into the season, the Lakers were projected to be better than San Antonio. Like I did not see a preseason projection from anybody that had the Spurs above the Lakers. So I think the Spurs kind of jumping to the level they've been at has some people still scrambling to kind of process that and evaluate them properly. But I think with how things are looking, whether it's Minnesota or Houston in round one, I would favor LA. And then against San Antonio, I think they'd be underdogs. And if they have a 6 or 7 game series and lose, then I agree that that's a success. Mago says, Jovan, I feel like sometimes you talk too much about OKC's record when you talk about Shea's case for MVP and not enough about Shea's individual greatness. He's been best player in the world this season, in my opinion. I hear you, and I think you make a great case. Like, I mean, I've said recently that Shea was my MVP. I think I have not felt as strongly about that. Like, there's been some things that have chipped away at it for me, right? Like, I think Luka has been the best player in the league for going on over a month now, and that Luka's ceiling is higher than Shea's. I do think that Shea has been very steady all season. And I will note to your point about Shea and the record, like, I think people, because OKC is so deep, have overlooked how many injuries they've had. And it is like they are able to offset it to a degree because of their depth, but OKC has been more injured than the Lakers. Like, J-Dub has missed more of the season than LeBron and Austin missed. And he was a guy who was considered a top 15 guy going into the season. Chet has missed time. Caruso's been on a miss restriction, rested back-to-backs. Hartenstein, Lou Dort, AJ Mitchell. They have had a lot of notable guys miss a lot of time. And Shea's been the one consistent who has carried the team. And like, I think about the Denver game, where that was a huge game for Denver, a couple times against Denver, huge games for Denver. Denver, not at full strength, but like 85, 90% strength. I think didn't have Peyton Watson both those games. One of them didn't have Aaron Gordon, but still, like, okay, 75%, 80% full, whatever. Games Denver really wanted, and Shea just ripped their heart out in both those games. So, to your point, if you want to argue for Shea being the best player in the world or the MVP, I have no qualms with that. I think he is going to win MVP. And I would say up until late February, I thought he was the clear-cut MVP. But I think the more I've looked at like Luka's case, the more I've looked at Jokic's case, where Jokic is still basically number one in every advanced metric. And I think people are overlooking that for his case. But it's tougher when Denver is the 4th best team of those 4. And then Wemby and his statistical case with his on-off, and he's also been up there with Jokic in several metrics. Like, I think I've kind of been pulled in all 4 directions to some degree. So, but I would say if you want to say Shea's been the best player the entirety of the season, I'm not going to fight you on that. And but I also look at, like, I think the tough thing with this is I actually like Jokic could you correct me if I'm wrong? I think Jokic was the odds-on favorite to win MVP when he went out right after Christmas. Like, I think at that time, Shea had been the favorite for most of the season up to that point. Jokic, I think, jumped him right before Christmas, then had like a week there where he was the favorite. Then he goes out with the knee injury. Then it really becomes Shea as like the heavy favorite for a while. Jokic comes back. It becomes a little bit more of a conversation. And then Wemby's had a late surge. Luka's had a late surge, with at least within like the consensus conversation. Luka should have been more in there, but like he wasn't. So I think that is all chipped away at Shea's case. But if you want to say that's fine. I don't have any qualms with that. Peter, thank you for the super chat. How does OKC's front office do it? They get McCain for free, and he's a perfect fit. Mitchell would be second best player on the Lakers. Wiggins gets DNP CDs. Unbelievable. It is unbelievable. I don't know what Jedi mind tricks Sam Presti pulls over there, but I would go. Okay, I would say AJ Mitchell to me would be the 4th best player on the Lakers. I don't think he'd be the 2nd best player on the Lakers, but point taken. I mean, I made the case that Marcus is the Lakers' fourth best player, and he would be the ninth best player on OKC. And the fact that OKC's three top bench players are Alex Caruso, Kayshawn Wallace, and AJ Mitchell, like it's an embarrassment of riches, the depth that group has. That's before we even mentioned like Jared McCain, who, to your point, Jared McCain would be the sixth man on a lot of really good teams. Like I think put him on Houston, he immediately becomes a sixth man. Put him on the Lakers, I think he would be the sixth man, probably from like a scoring perspective. Maybe Rui still plays a little bit more than him, but like he would have a huge role in the Lakers. Put him on Minnesota. I think him versus Io and Naz Reid, I guess I'll give Naz his respect. He'd be the sixth man, but like he'd be right there as like the seventh man or battling Io. San Antonio, he would probably be the sixth man or right there with Keldon Johnson. So yeah, I mean, he might not even be in their primary rotation come playoff time. So that just shows you how loaded OKC is. I don't know how they do it, but I would say this: if I was an opposing GM and OKC called me for a potential trade, I would not like. That's going to be interesting to see with what they do with Hartenstein and Dort, and if they decide to trade them, and if the Lakers get involved. I would be a little bit nervous the Lakers side of the line there of just how that negotiation goes, because Sam Presti just somehow walks every GM down and gets maximum value out of like every trade. Because like I mean the picks they gave up to Philly were like not good picks. So like yes, Philly got a couple picks for Jared McCain, but they're not good picks if you look at the picks. So yeah, it's crazy. Craig says Lakers will have that bench in 3 years because of Mark Walter. That's certainly possible. I mean, that's the goal. And Lakers, I would like to this point, I would love to see LA really bolster the bench in the future, because I think, I mean, since 2021, I think the bench has been an issue. I think this year, I would say is the best bench they've had since 2021. But it's a low bar to clear. And you look at, I mean, we could go through it quickly, but 2022, the 2022 roster, I feel like flies under the radar in terms of how bad the 2022 roster was. But half of the 22 roster was out of the NBA the following summer. Like that, I don't know if that's ever happened before. Like I would love to actually look that up of, has a team ever had. And I would say with the qualifier that like maybe there's been some tanking teams where they just had a bunch of bad young players, but like of, let's just say, guys who have played like veterans, guys who have played 5+ seasons, 7+ seasons. Has a team ever had that many players who have played a certain amount of years just be retired after the season because of how bad they were collectively? So that 2022 roster, I think should live in infamy. Then 2023, they remake things with the Russ trade, the Pat Bev trade, the Rui trade. That group was still pretty shallow. That was like a 7.5, maybe 8-ish group. Back end of the bench was still really rough. 2024, similar thing. 7-8 guys. 2025, I mean, JJ didn't even trust 6 guys in the first round. And then this year, I think it's deeper. I think you could talk me into at least 8 guys, if not potentially 9. And then if you really need to break Vando or Maxi Kleba out in case of emergency, both those guys have shown, like, Vando has had his moments, especially in like going back to December. Maxi's had the random game here or there where he looks like the Dallas version of Maxi. But I would like I would love to be talking about the Lakers have Alex Caruso and Kayshawn Wallace and AJ Mitchell coming off the bench. And that should be the goal here, is like, how do they replenish the cupboard? How do they build that deep of a bench moving forward? Because OKC set the standard with that, where they almost have too many guys. I don't know how they're going to, like, Isaiah Joe and Andrew, I always call him Andrew Wiggins. Aaron Wiggins are probably on the outside looking in, and those guys have played huge roles for them during the regular season. Like, they might not even get playoff minutes at this point. So they've got a great situation going, but like, that should be the Lakers' goal. Jay says 19-20 Lakers versus 25-26 Thunder. Who you got in a series? That LA squad was stacked. Great bench. I think I would go with the 20 Lakers. And the reason I would pick the 20 Lakers is I think they had two of the top 5 at worst players in the league, and having that version of AD and that version of LeBron. I think one thing we've seen with OKC, even dating back to last season with them, but over the last couple of years, I think we've seen it a little bit in the Denver matchup. Like, they can be overpowered physically. I think if there's like they often lose the rebounding battle. Their two weaknesses as a team are they can go cold from 3, and that could really swing their offense. And then they're often neutral to negative in the rebounding battle. So if you have a giant team like the Lakers that could overwhelm them physically and hang with them athletically, I think I would give, like, the Lakers would have a real shot now. And I mean, they have a bunch of guys to throw at Shea. I don't think that, Chet is just too skinny to hang with AD. Maybe Hartenstein can bang with him a little bit, but then AD's too quick and athletic for him. So they'd have an AD problem. They'd also have a LeBron problem. He's too big for Dort. He's too big for J-Dub. I mean, they kind of have a current LeBron problem, let alone 2020 LeBron. I think one factor in this series would be the 3-point shooting. I think both teams are going to cheat off each other, pack the paint, and there could be an element of just like who shoots better. But I think the 2020 Lakers have one of the best modern defenses of all time. And I think that doesn't get talked about enough with that group. And it's like on one side you have their core rotation was so big and long and just so good defensively. And then you have two of the top 5 guys in the league leading your offense. And it's like, yeah, that's a special combination. So it's tough though, because I also think this OKC team, from a depth perspective, is one of the deepest teams of all time. And, I think if they were healthier, I think would have pushed for the 70-ish game, win total. I don't know if they would have gotten the 74, but I think styles make fights, and in this matchup, I think the Lakers could hang with them defensively, but then offensively, like, really play through the size and strength advantages with. Now, I think Shea, I know for as great as the Lakers perimeter defense was, I think Shea's still going to get his, and he's going to get to the foul line. He's going to get guys in foul trouble. And I think Shea is levitated to a certain level where I don't think Caruso, Avery Bradley, Danny Green, like, those guys aren't shutting him down. I think Shea's still going to get his. But yeah, that would be a really fun series. Keon Park, thank you for the super chat. Lakers will have that bench in 3 years, but Luka might want out even if he's willing to stay. He'll be 30 or older. I'd rather see a title with Luka within 3 years by trading for Giannis or a restricted free agent this summer. To this point, I think there's like a little bit of a misguided notion with Luka and his timeline. Like, I think Luka's timeline is now. Now, I think it's also going to be multiple years in the future, but I think sometimes with some of the stuff that's been floated out from the Lakers side in terms of this being, is it 2026 summer? Is it 2027 summer? Or it's going to be like a multi-year build? I think that's too long. I just think that's too long. Like, Luka just led a team to the finals 2 years ago. He's one of the best players in the world on the short list of guys you would want to lead a championship team. I don't think you want to play with his career and push this out an extra year or two. So to that point, I'm with you. I would rather them go after some sort of win now move this summer and try to build the best roster possible now, rather than, like, I think a really disappointing move would be, I mentioned earlier, adding Mitchell Robinson, adding Lou Dort. I mean, maybe if you add both, I would like adding both, but if you just added like one of those guys and basically ran it back with the same group, I think you're better, but we'll see, right? Like we'll see how LA fares against OKC down the stretch here. We'll see how they fare in the playoffs. Maybe they do beat San Antonio and have a competitive conference finals with OKC, or maybe they get walked down by San Antonio in round 2. Like I think somewhere in between those two outcomes is what's going to happen. But if they do not, like if they, let's say they lose by double figures to OKC in both of the matchups and then lose to San Antonio in like 5, that kind of shows you the gap between those two respective teams, and those two teams aren't going anywhere. Like OKC is going to keep reloading. They have a bajillion picks, and they also have a bunch of young guys on team-friendly contracts. San Antonio also has a bunch of picks and is going to, I mean, Dylan Harper and Stephon Castle I think both will probably be all-stars at some point here shortly. So San Antonio is going to get better. OKC could potentially get even better. Lakers got to get better. And just adding like one starter to me is not enough. I think ideally it's like 3 starting level players and some better back-end roster depth. And like if you do all that, now I think you're really in that OKC San Antonio conversation. LM Himothy, do you think we should just go and scout for raw defensive players and develop them offensively? I see a pattern in the best teams following this formula. I'd be open to this. I would say in general, and a big shout out to Pete Zayas and Laker Film Room, because they've been on this over the last couple of years. But one of the things I think the Lakers have done a poor job of developing and identifying, and I think this even applies to some of their bigs that they've developed or discovered recently, is like, I think a lot of the players the Lakers have developed and discovered are subpar from a motor perspective and subpar rebounders. Like that has been a blind spot. In general, the 3-and-D archetype has been a blind spot. Like the Lakers have not really had a 6'7" or even 6 foot. I mean, I guess Max Christie is the closest, but like that, just they've not had a Jaden McDaniels or someone like that who's just 6'7", 6'8", 6'9", can defend multiple positions, can be an average to above average 3-point shooter since like 2021. Like they just have really been lacking in that. I mean, they tried Stanley Johnson, they tried Troy Brown, they tried Juan Toscano Anderson, they tried player after player after player. DFS had morphed into more of a big man. Marcus is a little bit too small. Max Christie wasn't quite ready. Like they've been like just there, but not quite with that player. So I think that's been like the biggest blind spot. But aside from that, even looking at some of their bigs like Jay Huff, Christian Coloco, Drew Timme, they're a little bit more on the finesse side. They're a little bit more on, they're not like these monster rebounders or these like, I mean, I think Coloco has a solid motor and like Drew Timme plays hard, but there's still a limitation there physically with Drew Timme. So I just think like that's been a blind spot for them in general, where I would like to see them go after some more raw athletes who jump out the gym, have, I mean, like an Adu Thero, like more of the Adu Thero archetype. It's been unfortunate that he's been dealing with this knee situation. He's just been, injured basically all year. But that player archetype, I do think is the right way for LA to shift things, because as we continue to evaluate like the last few seasons of rosters, like in general, LA's been at an athleticism deficit. Like I can't remember the last team. I would say the last team that I felt was like an athletic Lakers team was that 2021 team. And since then, they've been below average athletically. They've been below average speed and quickness wise. They've been below average from like a motor perspective and like playing hard. And they've had the 2023 team like close the season hard. Last year, they closed the season hard. This year, they're closing the season hard. But like, it hasn't been like the nature of the group, the nature of the roster. And I think they need to restructure how they do things in terms of evaluating guys and like need to prioritize we've talked about it before on Lakers Collective. We talked about it before on here. They prioritized a lot of small combo scoring guards, like or offensive minded perimeter guys, and they've had this obsession with trying to find like more offensive firepower that I get to a degree, but I just don't think that's been their biggest thing has been, if you look at the last few years, it's just been they've not had the depth and they've not had the athleticism and defense. And like those have just been the consistent flaws of those Lakers teams. And I think it's time to address that. I think it's time to stop drafting the JHSs and the Dalton Connects and the Maxwell Lewises and start drafting the Max Christies and the Dutheros more and get some more size and athleticism and toughness in the building. And I think if you do that, you surround Luka and Austin with that, plus the right centers, and you have a championship formula. All right, last one here from the 101. Thank you for the super chat. And we're going to end this one on a positive note. Going to my first ever NBA game tomorrow. Shout out to you. That's awesome. Great game to attend. Hoping Braun plays. Wish he didn't have to play so many minutes tonight. Hoping team doesn't revert to pre-All-Star break form and get blown out. LOL. I would be shocked if LeBron does not play tomorrow. I know he played 33 minutes tonight, but LeBron loves playing against Cleveland. There's always something extra with those matchups. I'm sure there will be, I'd be surprised if like a big story drops tomorrow about LeBron potentially going back to Cleveland, or there'll be some buzz. I'm predicting it right now that there will be something tomorrow with the matchup. And there's been a lot out there about LeBron potentially going back to Cleveland. I would not be surprised again if there's some story or report or thing on national show where they talk about this. But I think LeBron's going to play, and I think LeBron's going to want blood tomorrow against Cleveland. And it's just a huge game for the Lakers. Like if they win tomorrow, that's one more banked win, and that 5-2 record that they need to close the season. Now you need a 4-2 record. And now you're one game closer to clinching the 3 seed. So I think the Lakers are going to go for it tomorrow. I think Luka is going to be out for blood. He's back from suspension. Luka does not like missing time. Luka is going to be on one tomorrow. He's also rested, coming off a couple days of no game, or 3 days of no games, and one practice. Like I think Luka is going to be ready. Austin got a break tonight. LeBron got a relative break, and team's just rolling with winning 15 of 17. But that will do it. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to the Late Night Gang. As you guys see here, we got the merch coming. Very excited about it. So far, I will say this is my favorite t-shirt. So this one is the Clubhouse Leader. But that'll do it for those watching right now. About 30 to 35% of you who watch consistently are not yet subscribed. It would mean the world to me if you hit that subscribe button. If you want to be a part of the future members only mailbags and members only Q&As, please be sure to join the Buha's Block membership. We got 3 tiers: Late Night Gang, Baloncesto Sickos, and Buha's Brates. I'll be back tomorrow night after Lakers Cavs. Huge game for the Lakers. Another win, or another game, but potential win closer to the end of the season and the 3 seed. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to everybody. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back tomorrow night. Hope you all have a great rest of your evening. Shout out to the chat again. Appreciate you guys, and talk to you all tomorrow.